Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Judas. Our very first item room has a very interesting item. It's called Leprosy and it was added in the booster pack update too. And what this item does, it has a very interesting effect, and essentially every time you get hit, a chunk of your flesh, if that makes sense, because leprosy, I think, is a disease of the flesh, and then it starts rotting away and falling off, and essentially that is encaptured in the spirit of this item, if I can say so myself. And essentially every time you get hit, a chunk of your flesh falls off and it becomes an orbital, and that orbital goes around you. It functions like a regular orbital. Every time you get hit, it blocks a shot. Of course, you can use it offensively to deal damage to enemies, but there's a trick to it, because at first, of course, you can only have 3 maximum, and every time you get hit, you get another one which rotates around you, and then, of course, you can use that to deal damage, but they're temporary, and of course, every time you lose it, then you can replace it with another one as soon as you get hit again. But you might say that doesn't really sound all that good, because we have things like the Halo of Flies, which just give you 2 permanent orbitals. There's no stipulation, and of course there's no need for you to get hit in advance, and obviously you would think that this makes the item worse, but what's great about it is that it actually stacks. It's one of those rare items which doesn't replace your initial orbitals, but replaces them with new ones, and not replaces, but it just adds new ones on top of that. So you can essentially have 6 orbitals when you have 3 other orbitals besides leprosy, and that's such a great concept, because not only does it essentially encourage what Isaac usually encourages, and that's taking damage in order to receive a benefit. That's a theme that exists in the game, and it's very ingrained in a lot of the items, but it also encourages, it kind of works from a gameplay perspective too, because every time you get hit, that you can expect that you're up against a tough enemy. Of course, sometimes you just end up walking into a bad damage territory, but even if that happens, then suddenly you have a little bit of a boost for the next time you enter a room, and it functions similarly to Fish Head. And that's a trinket that I feel like doesn't get a lot of recognition. Essentially, every time you get hit, you get a few flies to help you out. And of course, a lot of people do underestimate Fish Head. In my opinion, I really feel like it's a good trinket in some situations, especially for newer players who tend to get hit a lot. It works as kind of a counter defense mechanism, because every time you get hit, suddenly you have a new tool that you can use to fight against the enemies. And not only that, of course, there are also some breaking opportunities. You can play the blood banks, you can get the Ivy bag, and that goes for both leprosy and the Fish Head. And with that, you can just kind of stack up orbitals or maybe flies, and then use those to really kill enemies very efficiently. So you can imagine if you just got something like the Ivy bag early on, we could have used that basically as many times as possible, so we would cap out on our orbitals, and then we would be pretty much in a much better spot than if you just didn't have that item otherwise. And it's such a great concept, and I feel like I should have picked it up just to show you what I'm really talking about, but because we're playing Judas, we only have 1 red health, I didn't really figure that we're gonna be remaining at that, because of course if the first devil deal comes up, the chances are that we're gonna trade our health away, get a good item, and that's exactly what happened. We got Dark Bomb, but later on something different happened in this particular run. You can see that I'm at 3 red health containers, and obviously I could have never really predicted that, but with how this came about, it's just that we got a really nice selection of items, essentially stats ups that also had a health upgrade associated with them, so things like the blue mushroom, the stigmata, and later on I even get magic mushroom. So if I knew that the run was gonna go this way, I would have picked it up. I would have picked up Ivy back, and that would have been a fun opportunity, I guess, to showcase the item. But besides that, I just want to tell you just how good the item is, and maybe not good in the sense that it's really powerful, but good in the sense that I feel like it's designed very well, and that it just fits the narrative of the game, and I'm glad that it got added into the game, and I think that's one of the items that was added by Edmund, and was inspired by some other game or maybe some other film or whatever. I'm not really sure. It was inspired somewhere else, but I really feel like we need more items like this, which can both work defensively and help new players, as well as they can be really good for experienced players if they know what they're doing with them, and that's exactly what I support. And that's why I made my item telekinesis in some sense, because it gives you both that defensive protection if you're just new at the game, but if you're good at the game, then you can really time and make that item work so much better than you could otherwise. Well, anyway, enough about Leprosy. We did come to Boss Rush, and at first I was kind of afraid I was gonna miss it, and of course, how can I possibly miss Boss Rush or be even in any hurry when the run is this strong? But of course, it just comes down to I just spent a little bit too long in one of the arcades on one of the floors, playing the blood bank. I tried to get the blood bag, but I got the ivy bag, which was kind of disappointing. I just really wanted the speed upgrade. I feel like that was the biggest mistake that I've made in this run, just picking up items which was mostly experimental treatment for that speed downgrade, and it really didn't help me out, and because of that I really feel like I wasn't fast enough. And what's even worse, maybe, I'm not worse, but I guess we did get spawn out of it, so it's not too bad. And then of course we got the Emperor card, and if I didn't get it, I would have just not been able to get the boss rush, and that would have been such a bummer, because this is a really strong daily, and you can imagine a lot of people will have good scores. I think I was 30th when I finished the run, and remember that this is only 2 hours after the daily has been released, so I'm really gonna go down in ranks today. I feel like I'm gonna be like in the top 300s, if not even worse, on this particular daily, just because of how strong the daily is. And I know that other players will be playing better and just not take as much dumb damage as I did, so I know that my time is due. But it was a bummer, because if I didn't miss boss rush, and I would have been easily able to if I just wasn't lucky to get restock and then the Emperor card, then I would have been really left behind, and in that situation then I feel like I would have been in the thousands today. And you can just see how strong this run was, because we got technology 0, we are at 4 tier delay, we even have the mom's box, so not only can you get a really good trinket out of this, if someone is really persistent, they can get cracked dice, and of course with cracked dice then you can use that to break the game, and or just any other trinket which can allow you to do all kinds of crazy things. So my favorite has to be the Curse of the Tower, the Ivy Bag, and then Safety Scissors, because every time you use Ivy Bag or maybe the Blank Razor or any form of damage which doesn't add up to your damage penalty, you spawn a lot of bombs, and then you can pick those bombs up to get points, and of course you can keep just doing that, and that's a really neat combo, and I feel like that should be explored a little bit more often. But then again, getting those 3 items in total is quite a rarity, doesn't happen that often. I think it happened in 1 or maybe even 2 of my dailies, but yeah, this run was extremely strong. You can see that I'm just melting harsh, and we're at 2 tier delay. We got Cracked Crown essentially, and what Cracked Crown does is it's such a weird trinket, because usually a trinket is something that it has a very situational benefit, but Cracked Crown is just always good. And what it does essentially, every stat upgrade that you got up until this point, it just boosts it and multiplies it even further. So now this just one trinket is giving me a 3 tier downgrade, and I also am getting 8 damage from it, and also a speed boost and rage boost, and essentially everything that I already picked up until this point is just getting boosted and multiplied, and I'm just getting stronger. It's one of the best trinkets in the game, if not the best trinkets in the game, in my opinion, just because of how much raw stats it can give you, and that it's one of those, it's really the most stat influential item just in the game, and not just an item, but also include trinkets here. There's nothing else that increases or decreases your stats by more, except maybe if you have a combination of items, something like Libra plus soy milk. I would imagine that's pretty influential, but outside of that, just one base item, definitely Cracked Crown is the one with the highest potential. And what's maybe even crazier, you would think that there's some condition for this to be met, maybe you need to have a certain amount of items, but no, even if you have no tiers upgrades, not tiers upgrades, but no stats upgrades at all, it's not only gonna not multiply anything, but it's just gonna give you a tier delay upgrade, and that is again just kind of crazy. Imagine that, just having no item, and essentially you have an item that functions like the cancer trinket. Admittedly, I think it's a bit worse, but still, even if you have no stat upgrades, you're just gonna get a cancer trinket for free, and that's what makes Crackdown really great. But of course, I did pick up the tick, which was a bit of a bummer, but then again, the tick is kind of good on this floor because there are so many bosses, and it just makes it a little bit easier to traverse and kill enemies, and it's one of the most damaging items in the game, because as soon as you enter Delirium, he's already missing 25% of his health, and if that's not good, then I don't know what is. So overall, we did finish in the 44th spot with 42,000 points and 500 and a little bit to spare. And expression bonus was actually pretty bad, as well as their damage penalty, so it wasn't the best of performances. I feel like I could have done much better. There was definitely a forget-me-now hiding somewhere, which I could have finagled, or maybe just held on to that judgment card, or maybe got a room back somewhere. I just didn't explore that much, just because I was in that rush, and I did miss and skip essentially one whole floor, but it is what it is. I didn't make it too harsh, I did beat both of those objectives, and I did come in the end, so at least that counts for something. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.